You're listening to Sox in the Basement, a production of the Broadcast Basement Limited, where every show is 30 minutes of good and comes from a basement bar on the south side of Chicago. Pull up a stool, pour a cold one, and join us right now for Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always at soxinthebasement.com. 1.1 million times in 2024, somebody clicked on Sox in the Basement and listened to or watched an episode. And through the first 3 months, I just looked this up the other day because I was curious. I was doing something else, and I wanted to get an accurate look because now we're on YouTube, and we're also, because we're doing the video, and then we're also on all the podcast players, and I've been trying to figure out what I want to do. Do I want to go all video? Do I want to keep things the way they are right now? And I was like, well, let's just see how things have been going, especially with a really bad season last year. And we're still on pace right now for 2025 for 1.1 million people will click on and either listen to or watch an episode. I mean, some of those people will do it more than once. So we'll say 1.1 million clicks. I don't think there's actually 1.1 million different people. But that's how many times we're going to get somebody who's going to listen to or play an episode of Sox in the Basement. So after realizing that, I want to say thank you to all of you, because I don't know why you're listening to something about a team that lost so many games. I mean, if you're listening to a White Sox podcast or viewing a White Sox podcast, you're a super fan. And you are really enjoying the start of this season, even though it's only been a couple of games, because none of us could have realistically believed that 4 games into it, and by the time this airs, there will be a 5th game, so they're either going to be above 500 or below 500, but 4 games into it as we sit here, a 500 baseball team locked in a 3-way tie atop the American League Central when April started. If you would have told me when April started, they'd be locked in any kind of a tie for first place in our division, I would have laughed and laughed. And they only needed to go 500 to do that, Ed. That's how little faith I've had. But it's amazing what the White Sox have done just in the first couple of games against bad competition, I believe.
Well, yeah, no one's going to mistake the Angels for a playoff team, and the Twins are a disaster.
They are, aren't they? Like, in such a winnable division.
Twins are bad.
In such a winnable division, I think they're going to be one of those teams you can beat up on, and we're going to get them a lot here in this month, aren't we? Like that's the thing. You're going to get the A's 6 games. You got more of the Twins after this series. Like, yeah, they got to run into the Red Sox. It's not all easy, but I mean, this White Sox team could be, I'm not going to say 500, but maybe 2 games under 500 by the end of April, and I think I would be like, wow, if that happened.
Well, yeah, and you and I talked about it as the season got rolling, that one of the things that this team will probably do is be able to pitch well enough to stay in ball games and be close. And if you think about what we've seen thus far, there really hasn't been a game that they haven't been in. So being 500 as you and I are sitting here, like you said, I mean, yeah, on one hand, we're all kind of like, what? But we expected more to start 0-4, something like that. But
that's an interesting way to put it, that they've been in every game, because there were 2 games that they blew out the other team. Right? Like offensive explosions that made no sense for this team, right?
Well, they took advantage of bad pitch. I mean, Chris Paddock was throwing batting practice.
And then the other 2 games, they're in it because their starting pitching has been incredible. Like, news that comes out on Tuesday is that Garrett Crochet gets 6 years and $170 million from the Red Sox. So think about it this way. The Red Sox give away Teal and other prospects, and they had to pay to bring in Crochet. They still had him under control here for a little while, and they said, no, we don't want him just for a couple years. We want him into his 30s. I think he'll be 31 when this runs out, if I'm right about it. And we're going to pay the price. And that comes out to about $28 million a year, which kind of blows a hole in what the White Sox were putting out there last year, which is he's not going to negotiate. He wants to go to free agency and test the waters. There's no way to re-sign him. That's not true, because the Red Sox did re-sign him. They just have the ability to sign a guy to a big-time deal. The White Sox will never be able to do that until Jerry Reinsdorf is dead or sells the team, because he refuses to spend money like that. So if you're not going to spend money like that, if your owner is never going to let your general manager go out and give a guy 6 years and $170 million after an ace essentially falls in your lap that you didn't even realize you had in the organization for a couple of years, if you're not going to be able to do that, you then have to build a pitching staff with a system and you have to be able to move pitchers in and out. Like when they get close to contract time, they'll move on. There's other guys that are coming up, and that seems to be what they're setting up. Bannister introduces a system. The cutter, I think everybody's learning it. They're keeping guys off base. This entire staff is like my pitching dream because they don't let anybody on base, at least through the first 4 games. The whip is incredible. In fact, the 4 starters through the first 4 games, and I have to keep saying through the first 4 games because this show will be out after the 5th game of the season is played, and they'll probably give up 10 runs, and starting pitching will look terrible. But through the first 4 games, no runs given up, no earned runs given up. And that's astounding. I think it's 23 innings and no earned runs. 3 quality starts out of 4 starts. 3 starts in which the starter went 6 innings and gave up 3 or less runs, actually giving up 0 runs. And this is what you want. And the runs that were given up were, offshoot bullpen runs. Like in the end, this is a team, like I described on the last episode, that could be winning games 3-2, 2-1. And every once in a while, they'll have an offensive explosion. And that's what we've seen through the first 4 games.
Yeah, and like I said, what you're looking at when you're looking at the offensive explosion is you're looking at being able to take advantage of other teams' bad pitching, which is something that the White Sox did not do in a historically bad season last year, right? Nobody looked bad against the White Sox offense. So at least this year, in a very small sample size, again, 2 out of the 4 games is not necessarily a trend-making thing, but you can take away from the idea that when you have a pitcher, the guy that they took advantage of in game 1 was ballyhooed for missing all of the minor leagues and coming straight to the Angels, straight to their 26-man roster. And Chris Paddock has been all sorts of terrible for years now. And so when you have guys that are bad and you are able to take advantage of them, and take advantage of them by putting the ball out of the ballpark too, which is kind of an important thing, that is going to lead to some wins, but it really just, it starts so much with the pitching. And like you said, they almost had, out of those first 4 games, 4 straight quality starts. Jonathan Cannon was just not quite as sharp as
he was
Davis
letting guys on base.
Martin Perez. He was getting guys on base, but he was getting out of trouble.
Yeah.
He
was doing a tightrope walk. So you're right. There were 3 of them that were like a dream for me, and Jonathan Cannon made me sweat the entire game. They have, let me count them up here real quick, 7 home runs in their first 4 games. Benintendi's got 2. If this is what we're going to get out of Andrew Benintendi, especially coming off the injury that took away a good chunk of his spring. Like that, this is what you wanted. You wanted to see him come out and be an offensive weapon for this team. You look at this through the prism of this is a rebuilding team trying to set a base for the future. Like I know Martin Perez is telling the press after they go 2-2, we got big plans for the end of September. I don't know what that is. They're taking everybody out for ice cream. I don't know what the big plans are at the end of September that Martin Perez has.
There's probably some kind of like barbecue and bourbon trail trip that they could take,
I don't know what they're doing at the end of September. And it's really exciting that Martin Perez says, just wait. It's going to be great. I'm not buying that, but he's all excited.
Pumpkin spice for everybody.
Right. He's all excited. If they're that good in the first half of the season, Martin Perez has probably pitched really well and he gets traded. Andrew Benintendi probably gets traded. Luis Robert Jr. probably gets traded. Because, look, the idea of good defense and solid pitching winning more baseball games, that's a great base, right? But nobody in that front office, I don't care if they rattle off 10 straight wins, nobody in that front office is going to sit there and say, oh, this is our year this year. We got to make a playoff push. So the wins don't matter as much as the performances. So Benintendi getting the ball out of the ballpark twice already, that's big. Seeing guys that are lifting the ball out early on and producing some power. And now we're going to kind of wait and see, okay, which one of these veterans that could be flipped are going to have good first halves? And then which one of the younger guys that could be part of the team long-term are going to perform? Like Lenny Sosa, 083 out of the box, man, 1 for 12. Like, I got to say something bad about you because I want to say something bad about Andrew Vaughn, who's 2 for 15, hitting 133 through his first 4 games. And no difference really in what he's producing than what we saw in spring. So there's some good, and then there are still a lot of, red flags and warning signals with some of these players. And that'll be what you're watching for this month. Again, it's the pitching. The pitching's what you're watching because the pitching is ahead of the hitting. These offensive explosions have been fun, but they really should have won 3 games because the one with Cannon, wasn't that like that was a 1-0 game, right? It's a 1-0 game, the Cannon game. That's a game they should have been able to win. That game shows the offensive inefficiencies, and they still haven't fixed that. They're going to be up and down depending on what the matchup is on the mound. When they play better teams, you're going to lose a lot of those games. And so what I'm most interested in continues to be the pitching, and the starting pitching mostly, because relief pitchers, every year, they're up and down, they fluctuate. Starting pitchers are telling you what kind of base you have, what you have for 2026, what you need to add to. We're waiting for some of these guys like Noah Schultz to get here and Hagen Smith, and that's just going to improve your rotation. So, I mean, right now the starting pitching's the story, and that's why I'm mostly excited about the beginning of the season, not the 2-2 record through 4, not the funny thing of like, oh, look at that, we entered April and we were tied in first place. Isn't that amazing? Like, all that stuff is just fun stuff to kind of laugh about. The starting pitching thing is real to me, and I want to see that continue all year long. It won't be at this rate, but this is solid to start off the season.
Yeah, and one of the things that you said is largely true. It's very unlikely that they're going to reach the trade deadline and be in a playoff position to where the front office is going to add, and certainly they're going to still look to maybe subtract a veteran if it means that they can put somebody in place that's going to be there longer term. But at the same time, also that's so putting the cart in front of the horse, because this team has got to not only show that they can win those 1-0 games, okay, and a bunch of 250 at best hitters can string together, every single game can string together enough hits to push 1 or 2 runs across to at least give themselves an opportunity. But also, you're going to have the Guardians are going to have to fall flat on their face. The Royals are going to have to fall flat on their face.
They're not winning the division. No. They're not winning the division. They're not going to the playoffs. In fact, right now, Chris Getz should be just kind of giving a quick little text off to the Atlanta Braves saying, hey, Profar's out for 80 games and you can't use him in the postseason. Are you interested in Andrew Benintendi? Have you seen his first 4 games? Like, they should still be thinking that way, and hopefully they are. Sox in the Basement listeners, switch to a new age of life. Keep mom and dad, grandma and grandpa out of assisted living, and look no further than Hyatt Home Medical Equipment on the Southwest Side. Make it so they can get around on their own and live independently with stair lifts, ramps, grab bars, lift chairs, and even bathroom remodeling. Hyatt works with insurance and has 0% financing for qualified individuals. They have the latest and greatest in CPAP machines. If you're unhappy with your vendor, switch now. Get supplies directly mailed to you. And they also have those continuous glucose monitors and so much more. See what Hyatt Home Medical Equipment can do for you, whether it's something permanent that you now have to have somebody live with and you want to make them comfortable, or whether you're having a procedure and just need to make yourself comfortable for a couple of months. See it all at HHME.com. Have you seen the torpedo bats? This is like the thing this week. Torpedo bat. I want a torpedo bat. If I would have had a torpedo bat in Little League, I would have been a star. I'm looking at these torpedo bats, and I'm like, man, if you could have just got me a torpedo bat, but when I was 12 years old, I would have made it as a walk-on at Brother Rice when I tried out at 14. And I definitely would have had a college career. And right now, I could be like the old man who's like, I'd be sitting in the booth by now because I'm 47 years old. There's no way I'd be on the field. But man, I would have had a hell of a career. If only I had a torpedo bat, Ed. And that's what I'm hearing.
Is that all it would have taken?
That's what I'm hearing.
Torpedo bat?
If you have a torpedo bat, it just changes the whole game. Now, if you haven't caught up on this, and I know a lot of people have, imagine a baseball bat with the end of it shaped like the bottom of a bowling pin, where it gets fat and then it goes back to being more, not as thin as where the handle is, but it gets thinner. The meat of the bat
tapers down at the end.
Right, the meat of the bat is moved over and is not at the very end of the bat. And the stories out this week is that it's somebody from MIT helped the Yankees with this after asking, what would you like? And it fits the rules for baseball bats in Major League Baseball. And the Yankees hit like 15 home runs in their first weekend, even though Aaron Judge refuses to use it. He had 3 home runs in a game. He does not use it. He's like, I'm already a home run hitter. I'm not changing my bat. So not everybody on the Yankees is using it. And they had a big offensive explosion, but we're talking very small sample size. And it's not the first time anybody has ever used a torpedo bat. I looked this up because I saw it in an article that was suggested, and I wanted to see, like, is this ever been used before, as people are talking about these strange shaped bats that fit the rules for Major League Baseball. And we have Ketel Marte, 2019 season supposedly used one of these things. out in Arizona. And he had a hell of a season in 2019. He was an all-star. 329 with a 981 OPS. It's his best season, arguably, in the majors. I don't know if he still uses it or if he got away from the torpedo bat, but supposedly in 2019, he experimented with one of these things. They popped up around Major League Baseball. The hype comes from the idea that batters are getting bigger hits off that section of the bat because the meat of the bat has been moved, essentially. And so it's going to produce more power, and it's going to produce harder hit baseballs, and it's going to change baseball to add more offense. Ellie De La Cruz, who plays shortstop, I believe, for the Reds, on Thursday, switched to it for the first time, went 4 for 5, I think, with 2 home runs. He scored me 23 fantasy points in a day. He had a massive, I think he had 7 RBIs, scored all 4 times with his torpedo bat. And so this is going to be the talk of Major League Baseball. 1, should they remain legal? And 2, what kind of impact do they have? And my initial thoughts, Ed, and then I want to hear what you have to say because you're always very analytical about this stuff. My initial thoughts are, 1, they're not going to ban it because Major League Baseball has wanted more offense forever. They're going to build a statue for this MIT guy and everybody else that came up with it because they've been trying forever to add more offense and more home runs to make the game more exciting. So there's no way Major League Baseball, if this was within the rules and there was nothing that said the fattest part of the bat has to be at the end of the bat, which it doesn't appear in the rule book as to what a baseball bat is. There's no way they're banning this. They're going to love more offensive production. And 2, I would believe pitchers are going to adjust to this and start throwing more pitches, the guys that are using it, that tail away. So when it goes off the end of the bat, it goes off that weird shape at the end now, instead of going off the meat of the bat. What do you think?
Yeah, it's not going to, first of all, 2 of the guys you mentioned there, Ellie De La Cruz and Ketel Marte, are really good hitters to begin with. Okay, so they barrel up a lot of balls. They are going to be guys that if you give them even a little bit of an advantage, they're going to take advantage of it because they're naturally really good. But somebody like Anthony Volpe, the shortstop from the Yankees, who's using this bat and hit 2 home runs, and that's all he's done. He's hitting 167 on the year. He's got the 2 home runs. He is he's had 2 walks, so he's 2 for 12, but with 14 plate appearances.
It may elevate home runs, but I don't know if it's going to elevate hitters.
Right. That's my point is that it's not necessarily something that it turned these guys into great hitters. Austin Wells is another guy that used it for the Yankees, and he's hitting 200 on the year. He's a guy who hits home runs as it is. He hit a lot of home runs in spring training using this bat, but it's going to perhaps help with the power because when you barrel the ball, you've got more mass on the bat than what you had before, and you're going to be able to get, like you said, a harder hit. So that warning track fly ball might edge its way over the seats, which is great.
Yeah, but you might flare a bunch of them off. You might not be able to square up depending on where the pitch is, and you're going to probably ground out sometimes when it would have hit the fat part of the bat because it hits a different part. I mean, like, we're talking about something flying at a plate that's a tiny little baseball with all kinds of rotation and curve and change and everything else coming at it. And you've got to make contact. And now you have to make contact in a specific area of the bat. And so these torpedo bats are going to work for guys that, I mean, I guarantee you, with all the technology that's available, teams could look at their own hitters and say, this guy, and these 2 guys down here at the end of the bench, they would benefit from this because they put so many balls off that section of the bat, they don't need to change a thing. But I would never let this guy and this guy over here go to it because he's going to have bad results because of how he squares up on a baseball. Like a smart organization like the White Sox have a hitting guru now, right? They should be looking at this. They should be sitting there running through film saying which one of our guys hit the ball off the bat in the area that would make more sense for them to have a torpedo bat than a standard bat. And then only adjust those that need the adjustment. Again, Aaron Judge is like, I'm already good. I'm not messing with what I do. And hits 3 home runs in a game with a normal bat. So I don't think everybody in Major League Baseball goes to it. And I think some guys will go to it to a detriment. So teams have to be smart in terms of who actually benefits with this different kind of bat.
Yeah. And again, just because somebody hits more home runs doesn't mean they're going to be a better hitter. Okay. If you were to, for example, take Jacob Amaya and give him a torpedo bat.
Still going to suck.
it's still not, he doesn't have any power. It's not going to make a lick spittle of difference for that man. If you were to give Andrew Vaughn a torpedo bat now, that, maybe that's something different, because there's a guy whose power has always been fringy for his position. And if he's able to barrel it up, but the problem is that Andrew Vaughn doesn't hit for a high average either. I think what's going to be interesting is guys that can hit for high average already, okay, who put a lot of contact together already and put solid contact together too. If you give them a bat that has this stronger barrel, are they going to be able to take a benefit from it? And because if you're talking about just a guy that's going to hit 230 as it is and is already good for 20 home runs, maybe he hits 229 and is good for 25 home runs using the torpedo bat. But you're right. What they haven't established yet, and what you haven't really seen, because it's been such a small sample size with the Yankees, is will you start seeing, Jazz Chisholm get weird pop-ups when he's out in front of something and hits it off the end of the bat? What happens, because these bats are weighted differently, when guys start getting jammed? Are these bats just going to be, cracking in half like there's no tomorrow because of the weird balance on them? There's a lot of things that can still go wrong with it, and I don't think it makes that much of a difference. If I'm the Milwaukee Brewers, I would spend less time complaining about the Yankees bats and looking more at why they gave up that many home runs in their opening series when they're supposed to be contending for the NL Central, and pitching is supposed to be one of their strong suits.
It's not just the bat.
It's not the bat, man.
Here's the weird thing, though. If Major League Baseball's rules on bats are so loose that you can change the shape of the bat, why is there not a bat that has been developed specifically to lay down bunts? That's what struck me. I was like, wait a minute, we could change the shape of the bat? Then why don't we have one that has like a weird flat area or a curve or something that bats a ball down into the ground perfectly? That's your bunting bat. Like that was the first thing that hit me.
I think guys have had bunting bats in the past, to be honest with you. Well, yeah, because if you think about a bunting bat, what you would want to do is you would want to have, bats tend to now have really thin handles, but think about an old school piece of ash, okay? And I said ash.
You did.
The tree.
You did.
I did. But those old school bats, the guys, the Babe Ruth type where you're swinging a tree trunk that has barely any taper to it at all, I bet you there are guys that if they were laying down bunts, and this is probably something you don't see much because, for example, the NL went to the DH and you don't have the pitchers, but those type of bats where you've got, it doesn't taper down, where you're not loading up the edge of the barrel, that is going to be good for a bunt, because it's going to absorb the shock more evenly across it instead of trying to flex it into the barrel and let the barrel do some whipping action, because that's what the whole point of having those thin handles is, to get a little bit of a whip to the bat. That type of stuff, I'm sure, has gone on. What you probably don't see it as much, though, because you don't see bunts getting laid down.
No, you don't. But I'm telling you right now.
And you don't want to telegraph it if you're a guy who bunts for a base hit.
I'm telling you right now, if Chris Lanuti had his golf bag full of different types of bats, I'd have had a hell of a career based upon the hype over these bats.
You would be in the Hall of Fame.
I would have one bat.
There would be a statue of you
I'd
somewhere.
have a bat with a scope on it, like that golf club that Rodney Dangerfield uses in Caddyshack 2.
Yeah,
I'd
exactly.
have one of those too. Okay, now listen, I'm looking at the transactions for the Sox in case none of you have been paying any attention. Something of note, Dominic Fletcher cleared waivers along with Oscar Colas, who had been DFA'd a few days earlier. Fletcher clears waivers. He goes to the minor leagues. Jake Eder was sold for cash. There is nothing that says we think you suck and we don't think you're worth anything, like getting rid of a player for cash. Like, do you want another player for him? No. Just give some cash. You got some coupons too, maybe in the drawer, in the junk drawer, in the kitchen. Throw those in there as well. Maybe some Disneyland tickets because it was to the Angels. So the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim take Jake Eder for straight cash money, and he's gone. Somewhere Kenny Williams is telling people that was still a good trade, but nobody cares. And luckily he's not telling us it anymore because he's no longer in charge of anything when it comes to the White Sox. Now, the other thing, though, of note is that the guys on the IL that started the season on the IL are going to be back soon. Brian Ramos, I would imagine, would head to the minors. I don't think he kicks anybody off this roster. Josh Rojas is going to come to the major league team. And Mike Tauchman is going to come to the major league team. Rojas is the interesting one because as I look at the White Sox out of the gate, I don't think anybody has established that they shouldn't lose their job in that infield if Josh Rojas comes back. Like, somebody's going to have to go, one of the infielders, right? Like, Amaya committed an error. He better stop doing that. That's the only purpose for having him on the team. Lenin Sosa, I mentioned it earlier, hit an 083. He's 1 for 12 going into Game 5. I don't know what he did last night if you're listening to this show on Wednesday. Brooks Baldwin, so far, 3 for 8. Just he's only been in a couple of games, but I mean, at least that's respectable. He's doing some things, so that's one infielder doing something. Miguel Vargas hitting 231 to start off the season, 3 for 13, but he does have a double in there, so he's had an extra base hit and he's driven in some runs. And as I always like to point out, Andrew Vaughn not doing much, 2 for 15 right now. He does have a double and a home run though, so those two were extra base hits, which is something we really didn't see in spring training, and they're not moving him anywhere. So that's the guys that you kind of look at. I mean, I don't think I missed anybody. Those are the guys you're kind of looking at as infielders. And I would think if Rojas gets in there, he not only comes on to the team when he's off the IL, but he takes one of those jobs in the infield, one of those everyday jobs I would think he might take. So who do you think it's going to be? Because, again, like I said, if Amaya is not super slick at short, and overall I think he's been playing really well over there, and I think they value the defense. He did have the error, but he's not going to do it with the bat. Lenin Sosa has to get the bat to come alive because this team always seems to be itching to move on from him. He had a really nice spring. It'd be a shame to see him kind of fall off and get replaced early on in the season.
That's the guy I'm worried about. I'm worried that it's Lenin Sosa right now. I don't think it's Brooks Baldwin because Baldwin made an appearance in the outfield, and I think they view him as a guy that if he can play the corner outfield and all 4 infield positions, I don't see why he wouldn't be able to play first
Larry
base
Garcia.
in a pinch.
That's what he is.
He is Larry Garcia again, which is, it's okay to have a guy like that as long as it's not Larry Garcia.
And as long as they're not dumb enough to put him out in center field. If he can't play center field, don't put him there. That was always the thing with Larry that drove me nuts.
Well, that was the problem is that they viewed Larry Garcia as a guy that could do things
he can
that
play
he couldn't
anywhere.
do.
He could do all of it.
But he couldn't, and that was the problem. Brooks Baldwin. We never saw Larry catch, but
he can do it all.
But Brooks Baldwin could actually play second and short. Larry Garcia never could.
No.
I think Brooks Baldwin could play third and first. I don't think we ever saw Larry do that. And I do think that they won't put him in center, but I won't put it past. I believe Will Venable has a head on his shoulders at this point.
I think he's a refreshing thing right now on this team.
Yeah.
But this is the difference. Will Venable is the difference in a competent manager and a fool. I'm sorry, but Pedro Grifol never had this team under control, said weird things all the time. I don't think that team really wanted to follow him, and I don't think they were really into what he was selling. And yeah, right now, I think we're just seeing the difference. I don't see a Will Venable team losing double digits in a row this year. It might happen, but I just think he's the kind of guy that would find a way to stop the bleeding. At least just observing his demeanor and the way the team seems to respond to him. And he's got guys believing that they're going to do something special at the end of September, where they say it out loud in front of people with microphones. I mean,
apple picking.
They better watch out. Like, they say something that crazy too many times, they're going to put him in a padded room. That's insane. By the way, Larry Garcia played in all 3 outfield positions: second base, shortstop, third base, and pitcher. In his career. You're right. He never made it. He never made it to first. He never caught. He was a DH for 16 games. One of them he started.
Oh, no.
He actually started a game as a designated hitter, if I'm reading this right. I don't know who thought his bat was so good. He can't afford to not have it in the lineup. So put him in at DH. This team's so ridiculous. I love the White Sox. I love it. I hope they go on a great run here in April. I hope they do. If they're at 500 in April, it's a party all summer long. You're going to get me out there all the time watching this team.
Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement. Sox in the basement.
Sox in the Basement. Heard everywhere podcasts can be found, and always on soxinthebasement.com.